Modern world is insanely unpredictable and uncertain. Right now, more than ever, it's all too easy to become overwhelmed by stress, anxiety, and emotional turmoil. In a single day, we can encounter a ceaseless flow of experiences, some joyous, others sorrowful, and still others that challenge our very sense of self. Challenges and tribulations test the resilience of our minds and the steadiness of our emotions. In the face of adversity, when the world seems determined to unsettle us, Stoicism, a philosophical school of thought founded in ancient Greece, offers a profound and practical approach to navigating life's obstacles and setbacks. Stoicism traces its origins back to the Hellenistic era, a period in Mediterranean history that began after the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC and lasted until the emergence of the Roman Empire in the 1st century BC. At its core lies the belief that our well-being is not solely determined by external circumstances, but by our inner responses to the world around us. Stoicism encourages us to recognize that the only things we control are our thoughts, attitudes, and reactions, even when the world around us seems uncontrollable. This realization is empowering. It liberates us from the chains of fear, anxiety, and despair, enabling us to confront life's tribulations with courage and wisdom. The Stoics believed that the key to a flourishing life lies in cultivating virtues and aligning ourselves with the rational order of the universe. In this short essay on Stoic principles to preserve our mental and emotional composure, we will delve into philosophical insights that empower us to confront difficult situations with grace and poise. We will learn to embrace the inevitability of change, align our desires with what is within our control, and fortify ourselves against the waves of distress. Together, let us uncover the profound truths that have resonated across millennia, allowing us to find solace in the knowledge that our reactions to life's challenges steer the course of our lives. 1. The Dichotomy of Control. The Stoics emphasized the importance of distinguishing between things within our control and those without. They argued that our thoughts, attitudes, and actions are under our control, while external events, other people's opinions and outcomes, are beyond our control. The chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals not under my control and which have to do with the choices I actually control. Where then do I look for good and evil? Not to uncontrollable externals, but within myself to the choices that are my own, writes Stoic philosopher Epictetus. Focusing our attention and effort solely on what we can control can help us free ourselves from unnecessary worry and anxiety over things we cannot change. In difficult situations, this principle reminds us to direct our energy towards our responses and attitudes, rather than getting distressed by uncontrollable external factors. 2. Amor Fati, love of fate. Amor Fati is a Latin phrase that means love of fate or love of one's fate. It is a philosophical concept that encourages us to accept everything that happens in our lives, whether good or bad, as necessary and inevitable. Ancient Stoics were the first to introduce the concept of Amor Fati. They believed we should not waste our time and energy complaining about things beyond our control. Instead, we should focus on living our lives to the fullest and maximizing every opportunity. Amor Fati teaches us to love and welcome our fate, even in difficult situations, and find meaning and purpose in every good and bad experience. Rather than lamenting or resisting challenging events, the Stoics believed that embracing them as opportunities for growth and learning leads to a more profound sense of peace and resilience. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche was a strong advocate of Amor Fati. He believed we should not only accept our fate, but that we should also embrace it with love. In his book, The Gay Science, he wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it. All idealism is mendacity in the face of what is necessary, but love it." Amor Fati requires us to let go of our attachment to our desires and expectations. It also requires a deep understanding of the nature of reality and the limits of our control. It's a difficult concept to practice. However, if we can master it, it can lead to a life of great peace and fulfillment. 3. Negative visualization. This technique, also known as premeditatio malorum, is a Stoic practice of imagining the worst-case scenarios that could happen in your life. The purpose of this practice is to help you prepare for and cope with misfortune when it does occur. The Stoics believed it was essential to be aware of the potential for bad things to happen, so that you would not be caught off guard when they did. They also believed that by imagining the worst, you could develop the mental toughness to deal with whatever life threw your way. Negative visualization, in other words, teaches us to embrace whatever life we happen to be living and to extract every bit of delight we can from it. But it simultaneously teaches us to prepare ourselves for changes that will deprive us of the things that delight us, writes William B. Irvine in his book, A Guide to the Good Life, The Ancient Art of Stoic Joy. Negative visualization can be a difficult practice, but it can be very rewarding. If you are willing to face your fears and imagine the worst, you will be better prepared to handle whatever comes your way. Contemplating the worst possibilities, but not staying in that mindset, can help you better appreciate what you have and prepare yourself mentally for adversity. It helps us maintain perspective during difficult situations and reduces the shock or devastation that unexpected challenges might bring. 4. Controlling emotions through reason. The Stoics advocated using reason to govern our emotions. They believed that emotions often arise from faulty judgments or attachments to external things. The Stoic concept of controlling our emotions through reason is based on the idea that emotions do not happen to us, but rather something that we create. We do this by the way we interpret events and situations. For example, if we get cut off in traffic, we might interpret this as a personal attack and become angry. However, if we interpret it as simply a mistake, we might not feel any anger at all. The Stoics believed the only way to truly control our emotions was to control our thoughts. They called this process assent. When we assent to a thought, we are essentially saying that we believe it to be true. For example, if you think, "I'm going to fail," and assent to this thought, you will likely feel anxious or stressed. However, if you challenge this thought and ask yourself if it is true, you might realize it is not. It's a simple thought process that can help you control your emotions and stay calm. Your emotions are the slaves to your thoughts, and you are the slave to your emotions, says author Elizabeth Gilbert. Cultivating self-awareness and rationality is a great way to identify irrational emotions and work towards aligning them with reason. Acknowledging and subjecting our emotional responses to rational scrutiny can help you avoid being overwhelmed by impulsive or excessive reactions, thus maintaining composure in challenging times. 5. Practicing virtue. For the Stoics, virtue is the cornerstone of a well-lived life. They believed cultivating these virtues leads to inner tranquility and moral excellence. I say that virtue is more valuable than wealth, to the same degree that eyes are more valuable than fingernails, Epictetus said. The Stoic concept of practicing virtue is based on the idea that virtue is the only good and that everything else is indifferent. That means the only thing that matters in life is our character, and that we should strive to live by virtue. Only attend to yourself and resolve to be a good man in every act that you do, says Roman Emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius. The Stoics identified 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. Wisdom is the ability to see the world as it really is and to make decisions that are in accordance with virtue. Courage is the ability to face adversity without fear or hesitation. Temperance is the ability to control our desires and impulses. Justice is the ability to act in a fair and just manner. Stoicism teaches that we should practice virtue in every aspect of our lives. That means we should be wise in our thoughts, courageous in our actions, temperate in our desires, and just in our dealings with others. Practicing virtue is a lifelong journey. There will be times when we make mistakes and times when we fall short of our ideals. However, if we are willing to keep practicing, we will eventually become more virtuous people. In difficult situations, acting per virtue becomes a guiding principle, helping us navigate complex decisions and dilemmas with integrity and composure. 6. The view from above. This Stoic exercise involves taking a cosmic perspective and imagining oneself as part of a greater whole. The view from above encourages us to step back and see the world from a broader perspective. It's a simple but effective practice that can help us put our problems into perspective and realize that they are not as big as we think. The Stoics observed we are all part of a larger whole, and that we should not see ourselves as separate from the universe. The view from above is a way of reminding ourselves of this interconnectedness. To practice it, imagine yourself floating above the earth, separate from everything below. You can see the entire planet from a distance and everything that lives or has been created on it. You can also see the vastness of space and realize that our problems are just a tiny part of the big picture. When we picture ourselves as tiny beings within the vastness of the universe, our problems and concerns can seem more insignificant. It can be a very calming and perspective-shifting exercise. It can help us see our problems in a new light and remind us that we are not alone in the world. The broader perspective helps us detach from personal biases and trivialities, enabling us to maintain emotional composure despite significant challenges. 7. Memento mori, contemplation of mortality. Stoicism encourages the contemplation of mortality as a means to appreciate the impermanence of life and prioritize what truly matters. Reflecting on our mortality reminds us that our time is limited and encourages us to focus on what is meaningful and significant. Recognizing the finite nature of our time reminds us not to take life for granted and encourages us to make the most of each moment. The Stoics believed death was a natural part of life and that we should not fear it. They also thought death could be a powerful motivator, helping us to focus on what is truly important in life. The Stoic philosophers Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius emphasized the importance of contemplating death to cultivate wisdom, gratitude, and a more meaningful life. Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day. The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time, writes Seneca. Death is an undeniable part of the human experience, and by acknowledging its certainty, we face the truth of our existence. It helps us forget unnecessary fears and anxieties about death, allowing us to focus on what truly matters. Memento mori can be challenging to come to terms with, but it can also be very liberating. When we remember we are mortal, we are free to live our lives without fear. We can also appreciate the time we have and make the most of every moment. 8. Adversity as an opportunity for resilience. Stoics saw adversity as an opportunity for growth, character development, and self-improvement. Instead of seeing challenging situations as obstacles, they viewed them as chances to exercise virtues, resilience, and strength of character. Difficulties were seen as a form of spiritual training, leading individuals to become more virtuous and better equipped to face future challenges. The Stoics believed adversity was a natural part of life, and that we should not see it as something to be avoided. Instead, we should see it as an opportunity to become stronger and more resilient. They thought we could use adversity to test our character, learn more about ourselves, and grow our compassion and empathy for others. There are many examples of how the Stoics used adversity as an opportunity. For example, Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote about how he used his illness to learn more about himself and to become a better person. Just as nature takes every obstacle, every impediment, and works around it, turns it to its purposes, incorporates it into itself, so too, a rational being can turn each setback into raw material and use it to achieve its goal, Aurelius said. Seneca, the Roman Stoic philosopher, wrote about how he used his exile to focus on his writing and to become a better philosopher. Epictetus, the Greek Stoic philosopher, taught his students that adversity was an opportunity to practice virtue. He said, "When you are faced with adversity, ask yourself, what good can I do in this situation?" The Stoic concept of adversity as an opportunity can be a helpful way to cope with difficult times. When we see adversity as an opportunity, we can see the challenges in our lives in a new light. We can also see how we can grow and learn from our experiences. 9. Ego detachment. Stoicism encourages us to detach ourselves from our ego and externalize our sense of self-worth. The Stoics believed our ego is the source of many of our problems, and that we would be happier if we could detach ourselves from it. The ego is our sense of self and who we are. It is often based on our thoughts, emotions, and desires. Negative states of mind, such as anger, resentment, fear, envy, and jealousy, are products of the ego, writes author Eckhart Tolle. The Stoics observed that our ego is constantly seeking approval and validation from others, which can lead to a lot of stress and anxiety. Ego detachment is letting go of our attachment to our ego. That means accepting ourselves for who we are without judgment or criticism. It also means letting go of our need for approval and validation from others. We become less vulnerable to praise and criticism. Detachment fosters emotional stability and reduces the impact of external events on our inner tranquility. When we are not attached to our ego, we are not as easily affected by the opinions of others. This can help us to feel more calm and relaxed. 10. Limitation of desires. The Stoics thought our desires were one of the primary sources of our suffering. They argued that when we desire things outside our control, we set ourselves up for disappointment and frustration. We may never get what we want. Even if we do, it will never be enough. Excessive desires and attachments lead to inner turmoil and dissatisfaction. John Stuart Mill said, "I have learned to seek my happiness by limiting my desires rather than seeking to satisfy them." The Stoics, therefore, advocated for the limitation of desires. They argued that we should only desire things within our control, such as our actions and thoughts. This would allow us to live without unnecessary pain and suffering. Reducing our desires free us from the influence of external forces. We become less dependent on the approval of others, material possessions, or circumstances to determine our life satisfaction. Inner freedom allows us to maintain our composure and integrity in life's ups and downs. Let's stay connected. Join over 70,000 curious subscribers who receive my best essays and free curated tools for smarter living. Join us and get a free ebook, a collection of essays on life, meaning, and happiness.